Robin Lord Taylor, you play Oswald Cobblepot, also known as the Penguin in the Fox series Gotham, and it's a prequel set during the Bruce Wayne's childhood before he becomes Batman. Were you familiar with the whole Batman mythology before taking the role? Were you a fan?
I was a huge fan. I mean, I followed the comics to a certain extent, but I really it was really about the movies for me when I was a kid. I saw the 1988 Batman in the movie theater, and it was one of the most incredible cinematic experiences of my life. And from then on, I had just been hooked. And then yeah, and then also not to mention the original Adam West series was a huge part of my childhood. It aired every day after Scooby-Doo, so I was very much into it, very familiar with that as well. And yeah, I've been a fan my whole life, basically.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
being a fan, going into it, I mean, you must have seen obviously the Burgess Meredith version in the 1960s and the Danny DeVito version of the Penguin in the 1992 movie. Did you feel like you had sort of big shoes to fill then?
Oh my God, absolutely. I mean, those two actors in particular, they're such legends. Burgess Meredith, not only, I don't know if everybody knows, but he was an incredible Broadway actor for years and years and years. And so yeah, absolutely legendary, in so many movies as well. And then of course, Danny DeVito. I mean, I would watch the reruns of Taxi, and then with not just Danny, but also Carol Kane was in Taxi too. And so, but then of course, back to Danny, a fan of so many of his films. I think I saw the movie Twins like 1,000 times, along with Batman Returns. Those were both like very, he's, again, always been a part of my life. So yeah, to be kind of like the third visual representation of the Penguin, and then which is not to discount the amazing voiceover actors that they had for the animated series, but yeah, it's daunting to say the least. But yeah, I don't know. It's a dream come true to be in the company of those two guys. I mean, come on.
Yeah, a lot of the different penguins, have been very, different from each other, and you're very different from the two of them. What kind of work went into crafting this version? His look, his mannerisms, his the way he moves, all that.
Right. Well, in terms of like the look and the mannerisms and the way he moves, what I love about the show is that because it's the prequel, we get to show how all of these things come about in his life. For example, in the pilot, he receives that horrible injury from Fish Mooney, which then, he carries for the rest of his life, which, that contributes to his walk. And then also just like the fact that we're going for a youthful representation of the Penguin, and where the influences of the style of the show all go into that. For example, like Danny Cannon, our executive producer, co-creator, genius, his vision, he said his vision for this Gotham City is the New York City of his childhood that he always wanted to visit. So it's the New York of like Sidney Lumet and Martin Scorsese, and like, the late 70s, early 80s New York. And so when going into the look of the character, of course, like I had amazing collaboration with our wardrobe designer, Lisa Padovani, and she was very much influenced by the Sex Pistols, the Clash, all of those bands from that time. And then, so all of that coming together, which, also helped me, like, I listen to all of those bands now when I'm getting into character. It all comes together to create this iteration of Oswald. So there's a lot of different influences going on. But that's what I love about, again, the fact that it's a prequel. Yeah. My phone is ringing. Sorry.
No,
Okay. Yeah. That's so unprofessional. I thought I was off.
what was the casting process, like for you? Like, how do you prepare for auditions for this kind of role, for instance?
Well, I mean, this came down during pilot season, so that's the time when all the actors are going out for all of the new shows, and there's so many auditions at that time. But when I got this one, it was the Untitled Warner Brothers project, and it was, there was no script, there was no title, there was no character names or anything. They gave us a dummy scene to read for the audition, so it was fake names, but in the vein of the show. a scene that doesn't take place in the pilot, but that, you know, sort of stood on its own to sort of represent the Penguin, which, you know, at the time I had no idea until the night before I went in to read. And then that was my agent called me and she gave me the tip and she was like, oh, by the way, this is Gotham. It's a prequel to Batman and you're auditioning for the Penguin. It's like, okay, all right, let's go. And yeah, and so, but I had already worked on my thing. I already prepared. And so like the scene and, you know, and I've just learned, you know, from auditioning over the years that, you know, I just have to bring, you know, my own interpretation. And if it's correct for the role, then amazing. If it's not, that's, you know, I can only, you know, control so much. So I just felt like I did what was called for in the scene and then it turned out to be right. So yeah, I don't know.
You've done a lot of TV work, you know, your fair share of TV work in recent years, but this is, you know, your first big, you know, regular series role, 22 episodes this year, coming back for another season. You know, what was it like to take on that kind of challenge?
A dream come true. I mean, as an actor, you just want to work, and that was my goal. And I had gone from, you know, yeah, like commercials and then industrials and, you know, little plays and readings of plays, nothing major. And then of course that worked up to like guest spots and small parts in indie films and whatnot. But, you know, you keep telling yourself, like, it's so funny. Like I kept telling myself, oh, if I just get this one thing, like if I just get, you know, this series regular on a show, it doesn't even have to last more than one season, then everything will be amazing in my life. It's kind of true and then it's kind of not, because you realize how much of your identity as an actor is wrapped up in the struggle. And then when suddenly it's this incredible opportunity is handed to you, there's no preparing for it, you know, and it's like kind of a weird identity crisis in a way, a good identity crisis. Don't get me wrong, but you know, it takes a lot of getting used to. I never expected anything like this.
Yeah, and the good news, and you know, in terms of, you know, there's so much TV right now where you know, characters get killed off and, you know, all that sort of stuff. But canonically speaking, you know, this Penguin, you know, will be around, you know, when Batman comes of age. So, you know, at least you know, you'll have this job unless they decide to throw in some major twist.
Yeah, right, totally. And that, hey, I mean that could totally happen. I mean, I have no idea. I'm just happy where I'm at right now. But yeah, there is a little bit because, well, you know, I did 2 episodes of The Walking Dead. And there's no job security on that show. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter if you've been there for years and years. Like, you could go any moment. But so I sort of had that experience. This is a little bit more comforting. But again, like you said, you know, it's Gotham City. Anything can happen. So I'm just like trying to enjoy the moment. Just, you know, like take it day by day and like just really try and like bring something to the character that people haven't seen before. And that's sort of my goal. Yeah.
Yeah, your Penguin is sort of a contradiction. You know, on one hand, he's a complete and utter sociopath, but then, you know, he also has these insecurities. You know, he doesn't like being called the Penguin. You know, do you ever feel a certain sympathy for him, even though he is pretty objectively horrible?
Yeah, I do. And you're right. He is objectively horrible. No one should ever forget that fact. You know, if anyone starts to feel bad about Penguin getting like his face bashed in, it's okay. Like he's, you know, he's kind of deserved it, you know. But you know, I guess, you know, what I try and do with every character, and I played a lot of, you know, nefarious characters over the years, is just trying to bring to it just a, I believe that there's sympathy in all, in every character, no matter what terrible things they have done. As long as you understand where someone has come from, like what's, you know, what's taken them to that place where they do something awful, such as murdering a fisherman for a sandwich, you know, like once there's understanding, there is sympathy that goes with that. And with Oswald, you know, when I went back to do research, you know, that's when I learned that he was, you know, relentlessly bullied when he was a kid. That spoke to me very deeply. That sort of informed so much about him. That was the human aspect that I could sort of hook into, and that's where I started to build the character from that. He has this insatiable desire for power and this need to manipulate people to get what he wants, knowing that that all comes from a place where he was basically treated like the least powerful person in the world. He was treated like a secondary citizen just because of the way he looked and what his interests were. That made everything make so much more sense to me in terms of like, you know, like why he needs power. He just can't ever feel like that abused child anymore, you know. And so yeah, that was where like that's where I really feel for him in a weird way. Yeah.
He has this strange kind of rooting factor, in the sense that he is kind of this underdog, and he's surrounded by all these other crime bosses who think very little of him. Do you think, do you find that you, or even maybe the fans of the show, kind of root for him to succeed in a way?
Yeah, a little bit. I found that, and it's like, on one hand, it's really it's satisfying because that, like we said, like that was what I was going for when creating the character. And also what Bruno Heller was going for, and Danny Cannon is like, there to find the human side to these larger than life characters, because again with the prequel we're showing them at their more vulnerable place, like where they're still figuring out who they are and they're not, king of Gotham yet. You know what I mean? Uh, so yeah, and I found, I get responses on social media from people being like, don't hurt Oswald, and he's always getting beaten up. I feel so bad for him, and yeah, of course that makes me feel good because it's like, okay, good, they're seeing the sympathetic side to him, but then at the same time I'm like, oh man, like are people like people shouldn't love him too much, like he's a nasty dude, and I feel like that will really be tested in the series, in the season to come. I think like he's going to be pushed to levels that or places that we haven't seen him pushed in the first season, and so it's just going to get a lot more gnarly, I think, as we go along.
Now,
Yeah.
comic book fans, superhero fans can be, particularly passionate about, about their characters and their stories. What has, been the reaction that you've gotten to the show and the character overall? Like, is it safe for you on the internet?
It's a relatively safe place. I would say it's as safe for me as it is for anybody else. Again, like at first when the news came out that the casting announcement came out, I got a little bit of flack for like, you know, like people were saying things like he's too skinny and he's too tall. These are things that people never said about me my entire life. So I was like, okay, well, if this is as bad as it gets, I guess it'll be okay. But still, like, it's to say it doesn't hurt a little bit is lying because you want people to be on your side, from the get-go. But however, as the show came out, like I had the majority of responses have been extremely positive, and a lot of people saying, Penguin wasn't, really on my radar in terms of, Batman supervillains, but you've really done something with the character that was unexpected. And that's like so gratifying to hear because, again, this is coming from comic book heroes, and, and a lot of these people, myself included, have this personal connection to these characters that, that people don't have with other characters, so it's you want to be involved in something that people feel passionate about, and as an actor, and this is just definitely that thing. And so like, even if, I'll get the occasional hate thrown at me for whatever, in the very least, it's like, well, at least, people are passionate about this and they're paying attention, like, Wiseman once said it, like, as long as they're talking, that's all that matters. So, but again, it's all been very positive and incredibly validating.
Your mother on the show is played by Carol Kane, who you mentioned before,
Oh,
and they're both such odd, eccentric characters. What's it like
yeah.
playing off her with those two roles?
Oh my God, it's a dream come true. She is absolutely delightful in every way. I told you I was watching the Taxi reruns as a kid. Carol Kane, I said, Carol Kane was on that. I've been a fan of hers my entire life. And, from day one when she like showed up, when we finally had our scene together, she, it was just all like, I felt like I'd known her my whole life. And there was a connection there that we had, that we still have, that I have never really had with another actor quite in that way. I mean, immediately we went through makeup and then we had time to waste, and so we were like, I went back to her dressing room and we were running lines together, and the next thing you know, we're like holding each other's hands and talking about our parents and like, really delving into our lives. And I really do feel like, I'm my worst critic, so it's hard for me to judge like what kind of chemistry I have with other actors. But like, I really do feel like I do have a connection with Carol, like personally, and I think that translates on screen. And I just, yeah, the love I have for her is real, and it's to have her playing my mom is just again just another dream come true.
The
Yeah.
show is also pretty action packed. You know, how much work goes into some of your own more physical scenes on the show? Is a lot of it done by stunt actors? Do you do a lot of it yourself?
Right, we try and do as much ourselves as we possibly can. I mean, obviously there's some there's some things that stunts that we could not do. That I leave it to the professionals. There was that scene where he gets electrocuted when he's trying to leave the bar, and then he just goes flying back. Obviously, that was not me flying through the air. But in terms of like the finale, like the showdown between Fish and Oswald, that was me and Jada all the way. Like we rehearsed that a couple days before. We recorded it, and then we played it each with ourselves to sort of run through the choreography of the whole moment. And then yeah, so we were completely involved in that. Any time that I can take it, that I can do it, uh, is so much preferable to me because it just reads as so much more authentic, and it also like it becomes the performance becomes more authentic in a way because I'm not getting punched, but I'm physically putting myself in that position, and it comes out in the performance. And so like yeah, and I know all of us on the show really try and do as much as we can on our own. Yeah, again, just to make it more authentic and real.
Having that relationship between Penguin and Fish Mooney escalating over the course of the season, and then you get that big fight scene in the season finale. Was it really especially cathartic and exciting to be able to just take it to that climax?
It really was, and it was yeah, it was cathartic in so many ways. I mean, you know, Jada's position on the show is somewhat up in the air, like and so I knew that I knew that I was saying goodbye to her in a certain way, and I'm just talking like as from actor to actor, like she was so giving from the beginning, and also like this has been such a crazy year of transition for me, like going from being completely, not completely, but really pretty much unknown to like, to where I am now, which is, it's not like I'm on Jada's level, but like it's a big change and it's daunting and terrifying. And she was so helpful to me about, just giving me advice on how to make that transition and what it means to be, to be a public person and to be out there and to and how to not let it affect you personally. That was an incredible moment. So we just had that immediate connection, and then and then also just from the character's standpoint, Oswald, even though he threw her under the bus and they were they had been enemies from the first episode, he really does have a love and respect for her because he learned everything about what he's doing in the Gotham City crime syndicate. He learned everything from her. And, it was a weird moment where like, I had learned so much from Jada, Oswald had learned so much from Fish, but he had to get rid of her to move on to become his own person. It was tough because I my own personal emotions were right there on the surface through the entire scene, and I'd be lying if I didn't say like the second we finally cut on that final showdown, I just couldn't. I just burst into tears because it was like it was such a big transition for the character, and then also just to so much say goodbye to Jada, not forever, but for that moment was really difficult for me. But and again, just cathartic and beautiful and special in every way possible.
You mentioned,
So,
adjusting to being thrust into the spotlight, of this high profile show and this popular show now, and this popular character. What has the changes been in your life since you started it?
just so many. I mean, like I well, getting getting recognized all over the city. That's new for me. Like having people wait at the airport for me to, show up. That's new for me too. Even like the thing I'll never get over is like I look at when we're shooting, I look out the window and there's a van waiting for me, and that's like huge. It's like, oh my god, I'm going to work. I'm going to go to work today, and that's an amazing feeling. And I know that at least for the next couple months, I have a place that I'm going to be going. I just don't feel so adrift, and I feel like there's focus in my life now that there never was before. That's a huge change, and yeah, and my health insurance is solid, and that's a huge change. And I can pay the rent, and I don't have to worry about that. And I got direct deposit on my Con Ed bill, and that's all really good too. But really, it's just the sense like that I just don't have that sort of nebulous like that cloud of uncertainty hanging around me all the time anymore. And that is like that's like one of the biggest reliefs I've ever had, ever experienced in my life. I mean, when you're a working actor for as long as I was, you don't have any stability. You don't really know what's going to happen. You don't know if it's going to work out. And it still couldn't, like, who knows what's going to happen. But, just to have like a couple months, a couple years of stability is breathtaking in a way, because again, my identity is so like tied up with being a struggling actor. It's like, whoa, who am I now? Like what can I freak out about now? As opposed to like not getting a job. Like that's what I always freaked out about before. Now it's like a whole new it's a whole new situation. So yeah, all of that plays into like my life just being 180 degrees different than it was a year ago. So
Before Gotham, a few years ago, you actually did a couple of comedy bits on the Late Show with David Letterman, and of course
yes.
aired his last show. What was that experience like on that show, and then what was it like to watch his last show?
Well, to watch his last show, I think was what it was like for everybody. I mean, it was very emotional, and it felt right, and it felt like he was ready to transition onto the next chapter in his life. But at the same time, he just like Bill Murray the night before was like, he ran out on the street and he's like getting people to say, all we need is more Worldwide Pants, which is Dave's production company. And it's so true. Like he was just like, through the whole interview, Bill was just like, I just don't think you're going to leave, and we're all kind of like in denial about that. But so anyway, it was very, it was so emotional to watch the finale. And then knowing that like I had this experience years ago where I got to stand on that stage and do a silly comic bit with David Letterman. I mean, it all came flooding back to me last night. And, I had never been more nervous in my entire life. I honestly, like, because when you're doing comedy, like lots of times you have, like chances to work on it and maybe hopefully in front of an audience and get some feedback and all of that. I really didn't have that on this. It was just like, here's this weird, crazy thing you're going to do with David Letterman. Okay, go. And it's just like, I mean, if the camera had been like focused on my legs, you would have seen my knees like shaking. Like I had never been more freaked out. And yeah, but he was unbelievably gracious. His crew, his staff were so nice. Like they had, they do this every day. And so they had seen like a million guys like me come in and do a bit and then leave. And they'd seen all of us go through that like incredibly nerve-wracking experience. And they were so like kind and gentle and generous and being like, you're great. You got this, it's going to be great. Dave's going to love you. That was so, it was amazing. I still like, it doesn't feel like it's me, like it just did. Like it's like, I can't believe that happened. Yeah. It's unreal.
Well, I want to, congratulate you again on Gotham and the next season coming up. And congratulations on having that memory with David Letterman. I'm sure so many people in this business do have those memories, with him here and there of encountering him, and that's definitely a special thing to hold on to.
Oh, forever. I mean, I hold that so close to my heart. I mean, yeah, what an experience. What a legend. Oh, I miss him already. Dave, come back. What? Yeah.
Thank you very much for talking with me today.
Thank you so much, man. Have a great day, and thank you for your kind words. I really, really appreciate it.